There are experiences in the 41st millennium that defy easy categorization. Lives lived in the spaces between what the Imperium considers normal and what it deems acceptable. To be an Ogryn is to exist as something both less and more than human, a living testament to humanity's capacity for adaptation and survival. But to be an Ogryn raised by humans, separated from your own kind, and thrust into a world built for beings half your size and twice your wit, that is something else entirely. It is to walk a path that few can understand, and fewer still can truly comprehend. The story begins not with birth, but with understanding what an Ogryn truly is. These massive abhumans, classified scientifically as Homo sapiens gigantus, represent one of the most dramatic divergences from baseline humanity that the Imperium tolerates. Standing between 2.5 and 3 meters tall, with some exceptional specimens reaching heights that dwarf even the Emperor's finest space marines, Ogryns are monuments to the power of evolutionary pressure and genetic adaptation. Their ancestors were normal humans once, prisoners consigned to harsh penal worlds, scattered across the galaxy during the Lost Age before the Imperium's founding. These worlds shared certain characteristics: crushing gravity that made every movement an exercise in endurance, bitter cold that seeped into bones and made survival a daily struggle, and isolation so complete that the original colonists might as well have been cast adrift in the void itself. When the age of strife descended upon humanity and warp storms tore the galaxy asunder, these prison worlds were left to their own devices. The carefully maintained systems that had kept the prisoners in check failed. The guards died or fled or joined the inmates in their desperate bid for survival. What followed were thousands of years of isolation, during which the descendants of those prisoners adapted to their brutal environment in ways that would horrify the geneticists of the dark age of technology. The high gravity made small, delicate frames a liability. Strength became the ultimate currency, the difference between life and death. Intelligence, that most prized of human attributes, became less important when survival depended on brute force rather than clever thinking. And so, generation by generation, the population changed. They grew larger, their bones became denser, their muscles developed the capacity to move masses that would crush a normal human. Their skin thickened into a hide that could turn aside blades and shrug off impacts that would shatter ordinary flesh. But this transformation came at a cost. The same evolutionary pressures that created their magnificent physiques seemed to diminish their cognitive abilities. The average Ogryn possesses the intellectual capacity of a human child, perhaps 5 or 6 years old at most. Complex abstract thinking eludes them. Reading and writing are skills that most will never master. Mathematics beyond the most basic counting represents an insurmountable challenge. Even language, that fundamental tool of human civilization, comes to them in simplified forms, their speech patterns reminiscent of young children still learning to navigate the complexities of communication. Yet to dismiss Ogryns as simply stupid would be to miss something fundamental about their nature. Their intelligence is not absent, merely different. It is focused, specialized, adapted to the needs of survival in environments that would kill baseline humans through simple atmospheric pressure alone. They possess an intuitive understanding of strength and leverage that would take human engineers years of study to comprehend. Their senses, particularly their ability to detect danger and assess threats, exceed human norms. And perhaps most remarkably, once they bond with someone or something, their loyalty becomes unshakable, a force as immutable as the high-gravity worlds that forged their ancestors. The Imperium, when it rediscovered these Ogryn worlds during the Great Crusade, saw not monsters to be destroyed, but tools to be utilized. Here were shock troops ready-made, beings of tremendous power who required minimal training and whose simple faith, once awakened, could rival that of the most devoted zealot. The decision was made to classify them as abhumans rather than mutants, a distinction that meant the difference between citizenship and extermination. This classification acknowledged that Ogryns were not the result of chaos, corruption, or genetic tampering, but rather the natural, if extreme, result of human populations adapting to hostile environments over thousands of years. Now imagine being born as one of these beings, But instead of growing up among your own kind on a harsh frontier world, where everyone around you shared your stature and your simple way of understanding reality, you find yourself raised by normal humans. Perhaps you were orphaned young, the sole survivor of some tragedy that claimed your Ogryn parents. Perhaps you were abandoned, left behind during an Imperial Guard tithe when your family was conscripted and you were deemed too young to serve. Perhaps you were the child of an Ogryn laborer who worked in the depths of a hive city and died in an industrial accident, leaving you to be taken in by human co-workers who felt some obligation to care for the massive infant left behind. However it happened, you grow up in a world that is fundamentally wrong for someone of your physiology and psychology. This wrongness begins with the most basic physical realities. From your earliest moments of awareness, you are too big. The ceiling presses down closer to your head than it should. Doorways require ducking even when you are still a child by Ogryn standards. Furniture designed for human proportions groans and creaks beneath your weight, sometimes splintering without warning. You learn early to move carefully, to test surfaces before trusting your full mass to them, to always be conscious of your own strength in a way that human children never need to consider. The human caregivers who take you in, whether from kindness, duty, or simple necessity, face challenges they could never have anticipated. An Ogryn infant weighs as much as a human adolescent. An Ogryn toddler possesses strength sufficient to cause serious injury through simple play. As you grow, your food requirements exceed what most families can easily provide. You eat as much in a day as a human family might consume in a week. Your body burns through calories at a phenomenal rate, fuel for muscles that never stop demanding energy. The financial burden of keeping you fed becomes a constant concern, a weight that presses on your caregivers even as your own weight presses on the floorboards of whatever hab unit or dwelling shelters you. And then there is the matter of your mind. You do not think the way humans think. Concepts that come easily to human children remain mysteries to you. When other children begin learning their letters, you struggle to understand why the shapes on the page should mean anything at all. When they start counting beyond 10, you lose track, the numbers becoming a jumble of sounds without meaning. When they begin to grasp abstract ideas like time and money and social hierarchy, you remain mired in the concrete and immediate, understanding only what you can see and touch and experience directly. This cognitive difference shapes every interaction, every lesson, every moment of your childhood. Your human caregivers try to teach you the same things they would teach a human child, but the lessons do not stick in the way they expect. They grow frustrated when you cannot remember things they have told you repeatedly. They become concerned when you fail to understand dangers that seem obvious to them. They worry about what will become of you when you grow too large for them to control, when your strength exceeds their ability to restrain you, should you become confused or frightened. Yet despite these challenges, despite the fundamental mismatch between your nature and your environment, bonds form. Human children might initially fear you, this giant who towers over them, even in early youth. But children have a remarkable capacity for acceptance. They learn that you are gentle despite your size, that you can be hurt by cruel words, even if your thick hide turns aside their physical attacks. You become the protector of smaller children, the one who stands between them and bullies, the one whose mere presence deters those who would cause harm. And in protecting them, you find purpose, the first inklings of that fierce loyalty that defines Ogryn nature. Your caregivers, too, develop affection for you, despite the difficulties. They see your earnest attempts to please them, your distress when you fail to understand what they want, your simple joy when you finally grasp a lesson they have been trying to teach. They witness your devotion to those you consider family, the way you remember their faces and voices, even when names escape you, the way you position yourself between them and danger without conscious thought. They come to understand that while you may not be clever in the way humans measure such things, you possess a different kind of intelligence, one grounded in emotion and instinct, and an almost preternatural ability to sense the needs of those you love. Growing up in human society means grappling with questions of identity that most Ogryns never face. On a traditional Ogryn world, you would know what you are from the moment of awareness. You are Ogryn. You are strong. You are part of a tribe that accepts you without question. The social hierarchy is simple and based on physical dominance. The strongest leads, the others follow. There is clarity in this simplicity, a freedom from the complex social calculations that plague human societies. But raised by humans, you exist in a state of constant uncertainty. You are not human, though you live among them and think of them as your people. You are not quite Ogryn either, having never learned the ways of your own kind, never participated in the territorial disputes and tribal storytelling that shape Ogryn culture on their homeworlds. You are something else, something caught between categories, and the Imperium has no easy place for such beings. The physical differences between you and your human family become more pronounced as you grow. By the time you reach what would be considered adolescence, you stand head and shoulders above the tallest human adult. Your shoulders span a width that forces you to turn sideways to pass through standard doorways. Your hands, even when you try to be gentle, are massive things that make human tools seem like toys. A cup meant for human use disappears in your grip. A chair built for human proportions cannot support your weight. You learn to sit on the floor, to eat from bowls large enough to serve an entire human family, to accept that the world of human-scaled objects will always be too small for your needs. But the psychological differences, while less immediately visible, run even deeper. Your emotional development follows a different trajectory than human development, where human children gradually learn to hide their feelings behind masks of social acceptability. You remain transparent. When you are happy, it shows in every line of your massive frame, in the way you move with a lighter step despite your tremendous weight, in the simple smile that transforms your brutish features. When you are sad, you weep openly, great heaving sobs that shake your entire body. When you are angry, there is no hiding it, no subtle passive aggression or carefully controlled irritation. Your anger is pure and immediate and terrifying to those around you, even when you try desperately to contain it. This emotional transparency makes human society difficult to navigate. Humans lie constantly, small social lies that smooth interactions and prevent conflict. They say they are fine when they are not. They claim to like things they hate. They hide their true feelings behind polite fictions. You cannot do this. When someone asks if you are hungry, you say yes, even if saying no would be more socially appropriate. When someone asks if you like their cooking, you tell the truth, not understanding why they become upset when you honestly admit it tasted bad. When someone asks you to keep a secret, you agree, meaning it completely in that moment, but then forget and reveal it anyway because the concept of information that should not be shared is too abstract for you to consistently remember. Your human caregivers try to teach you these social skills. They explain that sometimes you should not say exactly what you think. They demonstrate how to recognize when someone does not truly want honesty, but rather reassurance. They coach you on appropriate responses to common social situations. But these lessons are like trying to teach color to the blind. You can memorize the words, can repeat back what you have been told, but the underlying logic remains mysterious. You do not understand why humans make things so complicated. Why not just say what you mean? Why create all these rules about when truth is acceptable and when it is not? The other children in your community present their own challenges. Human children can be cruel, and your differences make you an obvious target. They mock your slow speech, exaggerating your simple sentence structure and limited vocabulary. They ask you questions designed to highlight your cognitive limitations, laughing when you cannot answer. They dare you to do things that will get you in trouble, knowing you lack the judgment to recognize their malicious intent. And when you react with hurt or anger, they point to your size and strength and claim they are the victims, that you are dangerous, that your very existence threatens them. Some children, of course, are different. They see past your exterior to the person within. They include you in their games, adjusting the rules to accommodate your limitations. They defend you from mockery, standing between you and those who would make you an object of ridicule. These children become your friends, in the truest sense, and your loyalty to them becomes absolute. You would throw yourself in front of a speeding transport to protect them. You would fight creatures 10 times your size to keep them safe. The bond between you and these rare human children who accept you transcends the normal boundaries of friendship, becoming something deeper and more primal. As you grow older, the question of your future becomes increasingly pressing. What does an Ogryn raised by humans do with their life? On your homeworld, the path would be clear. You would be taken by Imperial tithes to serve in the Astra Militarum, becoming a shock trooper who breaks enemy lines through sheer physical force. Or you might remain on your world, part of a tribe that subsists on whatever harsh resources your planet provides, living a life that is brutal but comprehensible. But raised in human society, other possibilities exist, at least theoretically. Could you work? Many Ogryns serve as heavy laborers in the Imperium, their tremendous strength making them valuable in mines, manufactorums, and cargo holds across the galaxy. But such work typically involves Ogryns who understand their role, who have been conditioned to take orders from overseers and follow simple, repetitive tasks. You have been raised with different expectations, treated more like a person than a tool. The transition to such work might break something fundamental in you. Could you stay with your human family, continue living as you have been? For a time, perhaps, but Ogryns grow to tremendous size, and your ongoing presence creates increasing difficulties. The structure that houses you strains under your weight. The food you require represents a crushing economic burden. And there is always the question of what happens if you lose control. If your strength and your simple understanding of the world combine in a moment of confusion or fear to create tragedy. Your caregivers love you, but they are also increasingly afraid of what you could do accidentally, let alone intentionally. The Imperium offers what seems like the obvious answer: military service. Ogryns make excellent soldiers, after all. Their loyalty, once properly directed, exceeds that of baseline humans. Their strength makes them devastating in close combat. Their resilience allows them to absorb punishment that would kill squadrons of normal troopers. The Imperial Guard is always hungry for Ogryns, always willing to accept them into its ranks regardless of their background. And so your caregivers begin the process of arranging for your conscription, believing it is the best path forward, perhaps the only path forward. The day you leave for military service is difficult in ways you lack the capacity to fully articulate. You understand that you are leaving your family, the humans who raised you and cared for you despite the challenges you represented. You understand that you will not see them again for a long time, perhaps never, but the full weight of this separation, the finality of it, remains just beyond your grasp. You promise to come back. You promise to make them proud. You promise to remember them. And you mean these promises completely, even though some part of you knows that memory is not your strength, that the details will fade faster than you want them to. The journey to your assigned regiment is disorienting. You have spent your entire life in one place, surrounded by familiar faces and familiar structures. Now you are herded onto transports with other conscripts, human soldiers who stare at you with a mixture of curiosity and unease. They have heard about Ogryns, perhaps even seen them in propaganda vids or recruitment materials, but you are likely the first they have encountered in person. Some try to be friendly, asking questions about your life and background. Others keep their distance, unsure how to interact with someone so obviously different from themselves. When you arrive at your training facility, you encounter other Ogryns for the first time in your conscious memory. These are Ogryns raised on their homeworlds, shaped by tribal cultures and harsh environments. They speak in the characteristic Ogryn manner, simple sentences and basic vocabulary, but there is an ease to their interaction that you lack. They understand each other instinctively, communicate through gestures and grunts that carry more meaning than you can parse. They have an internal hierarchy already established, dominance determined through displays of strength, and occasional physical contests that stop just short of actual violence. You do not fit with them any more than you fit with humans. Your speech patterns, influenced by years of exposure to human language, are slightly different. Your mannerisms, shaped by human caregivers, do not match theirs. Most significantly, you lack the understanding of Ogryn's social structure that they take for granted. When a larger Ogryn challenges you for position in the hierarchy, you do not respond correctly. You do not know the rules of such challenges, do not understand the subtle signals that indicate when to submit and when to fight. Your confusion marks you as an outsider, an Ogryn who is somehow not quite Ogryn enough. The training itself proves both easier and harder than expected. The physical requirements, even the enhanced demands placed on Ogryns, come naturally to you. Your body knows how to use its strength, how to absorb impacts, how to move with deceptive speed, despite your massive size. The weapons training, teaching you to use the oversized Ripper gun designed specifically for Ogryn hands, takes longer but eventually becomes second nature. Point at the enemy. Pull the trigger. Keep pulling until they stop moving, or your ammunition runs out. The weapon itself is built to be Ogryn-proof, sturdy enough to survive being used as a club, with a burst limiter installed to prevent you from emptying the magazine in seconds of enthusiastic firing. What proves difficult is the conceptual training, the lessons about why you fight and who you fight for. Your human upbringing has given you a slightly more nuanced view of the world than most Ogryns possess. You understand that reality is more complicated than simple hierarchies of strength. You have questions that other Ogryns never think to ask. Why is the Emperor worthy of worship? What makes one enemy different from another? Why do the orders you receive matter if they all seem to result in violence anyway? The commissars and sergeants assigned to train Ogryns do not know what to make of you. They are accustomed to Ogryns who accept everything they are told without question, who view orders as coming directly from the Emperor himself through an unbreakable chain of command. Your questions, simple as they are, disrupt this straightforward indoctrination. They cannot simply tell you that the Emperor protects, because you ask what he protects from and why protection is needed. They cannot simply tell you to hate the enemy, because you ask what makes someone an enemy in the first place. Eventually, they give up trying to make you understand and simply command you to obey. And you do, because despite all your questions, despite your slightly different perspective, you are still an Ogryn. Loyalty is bred into your genetics, hardwired into your psychology. Once you accept someone as your leader, your superior, your responsibility to protect, that bond becomes unbreakable. The commissars and sergeants become your little ones, the humans you are meant to guard and follow. The other members of your unit, both human and Ogryn, become your tribe. And the enemies you face become threats to your tribe, which makes them targets for your tremendous strength. Your first combat deployment comes sooner than anyone expected. The regiment is called to respond to an invasion, hostile forces threatening an imperial world that produces materials vital to the war effort. You load into the transport ships with the rest of your unit, your massive frame requiring special accommodations and extra securing. The journey through the warp is difficult. The confined spaces of the ship trigger your natural claustrophobia, that genetic aversion to enclosed areas that all Ogryns share. You spend the trip in a state of barely controlled anxiety, focusing on the faces of your human squadmates to ground yourself, repeating their names over and over to cement them in your memory. When the drop pods launch, you experience a moment of pure terror. The pod is cramped, every surface pressing in on you. The violent shaking during atmospheric entry makes you feel like the walls are closing in further. You can hear yourself whimpering, a sound that would embarrass you if you had the cognitive capacity for shame in that moment. But then the pod impacts, the doors blow open, and you stumble out into the open air of an alien world. The relief of being free from confinement is so profound that you barely register the last fire that immediately begins to impact around you. The battle itself is confusing chaos. The enemy is something you have never seen before. Xenos, creatures that move wrong and make sounds that hurt to hear. Your training takes over. You raise your Ripper gun and pull the trigger, the weapon roaring in your hands as it sends massive shells downrange. The recoil, enough to knock a human off their feet, barely moves you. You fire until the burst limiter forces the weapon to stop, then immediately resume firing when the weapon allows. When the enemy gets close enough, you switch to using the Ripper gun as a club, its reinforced construction turning it into a devastating melee weapon. Around you, your human squadmates fight with their own weapons, their movements quick and precise in ways you cannot match. They shout orders and coordinates to each other, complex tactical communications that you do not fully understand, but you understand the important parts. They point at enemies. You eliminate those enemies. They call for support. You provide it. Your massive frame, serving as mobile cover that they can fire around. They get wounded. You put yourself between them and the source of the injury, absorbing incoming fire on your thick hide and denser bones. In the midst of combat, something clicks in your mind. This is what you were made for. Not the complex social navigation of human society, not the cognitive challenges of reading and writing and abstract thinking. This, using your strength to protect the little ones, following simple, direct orders that you can understand and execute, being part of something larger than yourself, a unit that accepts you not despite your limitations, but because of your strengths. For the first time since leaving your human family, you feel like you belong. The realization transforms you in subtle ways. The uncertainty that has plagued you since childhood, that constant sense of not fitting properly into any defined space, begins to ease. Here, in the crucible of warfare, your worth is measured not in ability to understand complex social cues or remember abstract information, but in your capacity to stand firm when others would break, to fight when fighting is needed, to protect when protection is required. These are things you can do. These are things you understand at a level deeper than conscious thought. Your squad begins to rely on you in ways that go beyond simple combat effectiveness. They position themselves around you during firefights, using your massive frame as mobile cover. They trust you to hold positions that would require multiple human soldiers. They assign you to protect the most vulnerable members of the unit, knowing that your protective instincts will override even self-preservation. This trust is precious to you, more valuable than any medal or commendation. It represents acceptance, belonging, purpose, all the things you have sought since the day your human family had to let you go. Between battles, during the periods of relative calm that punctuate military life, you struggle with the mundane aspects of service. The paperwork that human soldiers handle with practiced ease remains a mystery to you. Supply requisitions, duty rosters, equipment maintenance logs. All these things exist in a realm of written language and bureaucratic procedure that might as well be written in alien script for all the sense you can make of it. You watch other soldiers fill out forms, sign their names, read orders posted on notice boards, and you feel a familiar frustration at your limitations. You have learned to write your name after much practice with patient human instructors, but it is a mechanical skill, copying shapes without truly understanding the relationship between symbols and meaning. One human trooper named Merrick takes it upon himself to help you navigate these complexities. He is a young man, barely out of basic training himself, but he possesses both patience and genuine kindness. When orders are posted, he finds you and explains them in simple terms. When your equipment needs maintenance, he shows you what to do, breaking complex tasks down into simple steps that you can follow. When other soldiers mock your difficulties with basic administrative tasks, he stands up for you, reminding them that you have saved their lives multiple times and that being unable to read does not diminish your value as a soldier. Merrick becomes your friend in the truest sense. You learn his face as thoroughly as you have learned anything. Memorize the sound of his voice. Commit to memory the way he smells of standard issue soap and the particular brand of glow sticks he favors. When he is assigned to dangerous missions, you volunteer to accompany him, positioning yourself to take any incoming fire meant for him. When he is wounded during an assault on an enemy fortification, taking a last bolt to the shoulder that burns through his armor, you carry him to the field medicae station, cradling his much smaller body in your massive arms with a gentleness that surprises even you. During his recovery, you visit him in the medical tent whenever your duties allow. The other patients stare at your bulk, some in fear and others in fascination. You ignore them, focused entirely on Merrick. You bring him extra rations that you have saved from your own meals, knowing that injured humans need food to heal. You tell him simple stories about the battles you have fought, leaving out the parts that frighten you because you do not want to burden him with your fears. You sit by his bedside in companionable silence, your presence alone seeming to bring him comfort. When Merrick returns to active duty, he is different. The wound has left him with limited mobility in one shoulder, enough to affect his combat effectiveness. The commissar evaluates him for continued service, and there is talk of reassignment to support duties far from the front lines. Merrick is devastated by this possibility. Being a soldier, fighting for the Emperor, is his identity in the same way that protecting the little ones is yours. To be relegated to rear echelon duties would feel like failure to him. You do not fully understand the complex emotions driving his distress, but you understand that your friend is unhappy. And when Merrick is unhappy, you are unhappy. You approach the commissar, an act that requires overcoming your instinctive awe of such an authority figure. You explain, in your simple way, that Merrick is a good soldier, that he has taught you much, that the squad needs him. The commissar listens with surprising patience, perhaps recognizing the depth of loyalty that drives you to advocate for your friend. The decision is made to give Merrick more time to recover and adapt to his injury before making final determinations about his future. Merrick remains with the squad, and his gratitude toward you is profound. He redoubles his efforts to help you navigate the complexities of military life, becoming something like a personal assistant in addition to being your friend. This arrangement works well for both of you. Merrick gains purpose and a sense of continued contribution despite his injury. You gain a constant source of help with the administrative and social challenges that you cannot handle alone. The bond between you deepens into something that transcends normal friendship, becoming almost familial in its depth and unconditionality. Other soldiers in the squad notice and begin to form similar, if less intense, connections with you. They realize that despite your limitations, or perhaps because of them, you offer something valuable beyond combat effectiveness. Your simple honesty is refreshing in an environment where humans constantly engage in social maneuvering and hidden agendas. Your loyalty is absolute in ways that human loyalty rarely is. Your emotional transparency, while sometimes awkward, creates an atmosphere of authenticity that makes the constant stress of military life slightly more bearable. You become a kind of emotional anchor for the squad, a reminder of simple truths in a complicated galaxy. Protect your people, fight for what matters. Loyalty, above all else. The squad develops traditions around you, small rituals that incorporate your unique nature. Before major battles, they touch your shoulder for luck, believing that your tremendous durability will somehow transfer to them. After victories, they celebrate by giving you the choicest portions of food, which you accept with simple pleasure. When new members join the squad, there is an informal ceremony where they are introduced to you, and their reaction to your size and nature becomes a test of their character. Those who show fear or disdain are viewed with suspicion. Those who accept you without judgment are welcomed fully into the squad's culture. But military life is not all camaraderie and belonging. The Imperial Guard demands constant readiness for horror, and horror comes in many forms. You encounter enemies that challenge your simple understanding of reality. Chaos cultists, who whisper things that make your head hurt, their words seeming to bypass your ears and implant directly into your mind. Daemons whose very existence violates the natural order, creatures that should not be possible but are nonetheless terribly, undeniably real. Xenos species whose biology is so alien that you cannot comprehend how they function. Organisms that move and think and kill in ways that defy everything you know about how living things should work. Your lack of imagination, which in other contexts is a limitation, becomes a strange advantage against such horrors. Human soldiers who understand too much about what they face can be paralyzed by that understanding. They comprehend the full implications of chaos corruption, the existential threat that certain Xenos represent, the cosmic horror of a galaxy filled with things that want to destroy humanity. You do not comprehend these things. Not really. To you, enemies are simply enemies, threats to be eliminated, regardless of their nature or origin. This simplicity allows you to fight on when more intelligent beings might falter. There is a battle on a world whose name you never learn, where your squad faces an incursion of creatures from the warp. The things that emerge from the rent in reality are wrong in ways that make human soldiers weep and scream. Their forms shift and change, violating basic principles of physics and biology. They whisper promises and threats in voices that sound like dead loved ones. They show visions of futures both tempting and terrifying. The human members of your squad are affected strongly, some freezing in place, others firing wildly without aiming, a few even turning their weapons on themselves rather than face what emerges from the warp. You are largely immune to these psychological attacks. The promises mean nothing because you do not have the cognitive capacity to imagine the futures they offer. The threats fail to terrify because you cannot project yourself into the hypothetical torments they describe. The visions wash over you without purchase because your mind cannot hold the complex narratives they attempt to create. You simply see enemies that threaten your squad, and you respond with brutal directness. Your Ripper gun roars, sending massive shells into the warp-spawned horrors. When they get close, you use the weapon as a club, its reinforced construction, shattering whatever passes for bones in these creatures. When they try to corrupt you with whispered lies, the lies slide off your simple understanding, like water off treated leather. Your resistance to psychic corruption becomes known to the commissariat. There is discussion about using you and other Ogryns in specialized roles against demonic threats. The idea is abandoned, however, when it becomes clear that while Ogryns are resistant to corruption, they also cannot be easily controlled in the chaotic environments where demons manifest. Your simple nature protects you from complex manipulation, but it also means you cannot follow the intricate tactical procedures that such operations require. You are best used, the commanders decide, in your current role. A reliable shock trooper who can be counted on to fight when others might flee or fall to corruption. The years of service bring injuries that accumulate despite your tremendous durability. A piece of shrapnel embeds itself in your left shoulder, too deep to remove safely. It aches in cold weather, a constant reminder of the battle where it lodged there. Your right knee, damaged when you threw yourself in front of an artillery shell to protect your commissar, never quite heals properly. It holds your weight, but there is a clicking sound when you walk, a slight hitch in your stride that was not there before. Your hearing in one ear is diminished after an explosion occurred too close, the damage permanent despite the best efforts of the medical staff. These injuries would force a human soldier into retirement or reassignment to non-combat roles. For you, they are merely inconveniences, small reductions in capability that leave you still more effective than most baseline human soldiers. You adapt to them as you have adapted to everything else in your life, adjusting your movements to accommodate the knee, compensating for the reduced hearing by relying more heavily on your other senses. The embedded shrapnel you simply ignore, as Ogryns ignore most things that do not immediately threaten their ability to function. Your reputation within the regiment grows, with each campaign survived, each battle won, each time you save lives through your strength and loyalty. The officers learn to use you as an example when training new Ogryns, pointing to you as proof of what is possible when an abhuman is properly integrated into a unit. The commissars cite you when arguing against those who would see all Ogryns as nothing more than expendable brutes. The human soldiers tell stories about you during long nights between battles, tales that grow in the telling until you become almost mythical in scale. But you remain fundamentally yourself beneath the growing legend. You are still the Ogryn who struggles to remember complex instructions, who needs things explained multiple times, who cannot read beyond your own name. You are still motivated by simple things: the approval of authority figures, the safety of those you protect, the satisfaction of a full stomach, and a task well done. The legend that builds around you is something external, constructed by others to serve their own needs for heroes and examples. You neither understand nor particularly care about this legend. You simply continue doing what you have always done, serving faithfully, protecting the little ones, following orders to the best of your ability. There comes a campaign that tests you in new ways. The regiment is assigned to an extended siege operation, one of those grinding conflicts where victory is measured in meters of ground taken rather than in decisive battles won. The siege lasts months, a slow and brutal affair where both sides are locked in a deadly embrace, neither able to achieve breakthrough. The conditions are terrible, even by Imperial Guard standards. Food is rationed severely, sleep is grabbed in brief intervals, between shifts on the line. The constant bombardment from enemy artillery creates a background noise of destruction that never entirely stops. These conditions wear on human soldiers in predictable ways. Morale declines, discipline becomes harder to maintain, fatigue accumulates, until even simple tasks require tremendous effort. The commissariat becomes increasingly active, maintaining order through threat and execution when necessary. The regiment that entered the siege as a cohesive fighting force begins to fracture into exhausted, barely functional units, held together more by fear of punishment than by genuine commitment to the mission. You weather these conditions better than most. Your simple mind does not dwell on past comfort or imagine future relief. You exist in an eternal present, responding to immediate circumstances without the burden of temporal perspective. When food is scarce, you eat what is provided and do not lament what is absent. When sleep is brief, you rest when told to rest and wake when told to wake, without the existential exhaustion that comes from understanding how inadequate the rest is. When the bombardment is at its worst, you focus on your immediate duties rather than calculating the odds of survival or imagining the wounds you might sustain. This steadiness makes you even more valuable during the siege. While human soldiers struggle with declining morale, you remain constant. While they grow increasingly prone to mistakes born of fatigue, your simple routines continue unchanged. While they begin to question the point of the siege, the competence of command, the possibility of victory, you simply follow orders and trust that those above you know what they are doing. Your unwavering nature provides an anchor point for your squad, a reminder that some things remain stable even in the worst circumstances. Merrick, your friend and helper, does not fare as well. The siege takes a particular toll on him. His injury, which has been healing slowly, begins to cause increasing problems under the stress and poor conditions. He develops an infection that the field medicae struggles to treat effectively. His strength, already diminished by the original wound, declines further. But worse than the physical deterioration is what happens to his spirit. Merrick begins to exhibit signs of despair, that particular form of soul death that can affect human soldiers who have endured too much for too long. You notice the changes in your friend, even if you cannot articulate what they mean. He stops helping you as readily. His voice, when he speaks, lacks its usual animation. He stares at nothing for long periods, lost in thoughts that you cannot access or understand. When you try to cheer him up with offers of food or simple conversation, he responds mechanically, going through the motions of friendship without the genuine connection that once characterized your interactions. The commissar notices too, and one day, Merrick is summoned for evaluation. You do not attend this meeting, but you wait outside the command tent. Your massive form, a silent presence that communicates without words, that Merrick is under your protection. When your friend emerges, he looks even more diminished than before. He tells you, in a voice that barely rises above a whisper, that he has been granted leave from frontline duty. He will be sent to the rear to work in logistics and supply. It is, effectively, the end of his career as a combat soldier. You do not understand the full implications of this decision, but you understand that Merrick is being taken away from you. This is unacceptable. You march into the command tent without permission, an action so unprecedented that the officers present simply stare at you in shock. You find the commissar who made the decision and you plead, using all the words you know, for Merrick to be allowed to stay. You promise to protect him even more carefully. You offer to take on additional duties to compensate for his limitations. You make clear, in your simple but powerful way, that Merrick is yours to protect and that sending him away is wrong. The commissar listens, perhaps moved by the raw loyalty in your appeal, perhaps simply recognizing that arguing with an agitated Ogryn in close quarters is unwise. A compromise is reached. Merrick will remain with the squad, but in a strictly non-combat role. He will handle the administrative tasks that you cannot manage, will coordinate supply requests, will serve as a liaison between the Ogryn auxiliaries and human command. This keeps him with the unit while acknowledging the reality of his diminished combat capability. Merrick accepts this arrangement with mixed emotions. He is grateful to remain with the squad, to stay near you and the others he has bonded with. But he also feels shame at his reduced role, seeing himself as less useful, less valuable. You do not understand this shame. To you, Merrick is still Merrick, still your friend, still someone worth protecting. His inability to fight does not change the fundamental fact of his importance to you. You make this clear through your continued attention and care, treating him exactly as you always have, despite his changed status. The siege finally ends, not with a dramatic breakthrough, but with a grinding conclusion. The enemy forces, as exhausted and depleted as your own, withdraw to defensive positions elsewhere. The regiment is pulled back for rest and reinforcement, having achieved its objective at tremendous cost. The casualty rates have been catastrophic. Entire companies have been reduced to skeleton crews. Some units have been effectively destroyed, their survivors folded into other formations. Your squad has fared better than most, largely due to your protective presence. Most of your original squadmates have survived, though all bear wounds both physical and psychological. Merrick is among them, alive and still part of the unit despite his injury. The commissar who compromised to let him stay acknowledges privately that your loyalty may have saved lives by keeping the squad's morale higher than it would have been otherwise. This acknowledgement is not made public. The Imperium does not officially recognize that Ogryn attachment to specific individuals can have broader tactical benefits, but it shapes how you are utilized going forward. During the rest period that follows the siege, you are given an opportunity that few Ogryns receive: leave to visit a civilian settlement. The settlement is located near the regiment's temporary base, a small community that has somehow survived the wars ravaging the planet. It consists of a few thousand humans living in makeshift structures, eking out a subsistence existence from local agriculture and whatever trade they can manage, with passing military units. You enter this settlement with a mixture of curiosity and trepidation. You have not been among civilians since leaving your human family years ago. The people here stare at you with undisguised fear and fascination. Children run alongside you, maintaining what they believe is a safe distance, daring each other to get closer to the massive apumen in their midst. Adults hurry out of your path, pressing themselves against buildings as you pass, as if proximity to your bulk might somehow be dangerous. But there is one person who does not react with fear. An elderly woman, her face seamed with age and hardship, approaches you directly. She looks up at your face, so far above her own, and speaks in a voice that carries surprising authority. She tells you that you remind her of someone, an Ogryn who worked in the settlement many years ago, before the wars came. That Ogryn had been gentle despite his size, helpful despite his limitations. He had died protecting the settlement from raiders, throwing himself in front of gunfire meant for others. His sacrifice was still remembered, still honored. The woman asks if you are a good Ogryn, like the one she remembers. The question is simple, but it strikes you with unexpected force. Are you good? You have never thought of yourself in such moral terms. You are loyal, and you are strong, and you try to follow orders. But are these things the same as being good? You do not know how to answer, so you simply nod, hoping that your intent to protect, to serve faithfully, to honor the trust placed in you, amounts to goodness in some form. The woman smiles at your response, and something in that smile reminds you of your human family, of the people who raised you despite the difficulties you represented. She invites you to her home, such as it is, and offers you food from her meager supplies. You accept, sitting on the ground outside her dwelling, because you cannot fit through the doorway. She brings you simple fare, bread and preserved vegetables and weak tea, and you eat gratefully, savoring the reminder of civilian life, of human kindness that exists outside the rigid hierarchies of military service. As you eat, the woman talks. She tells you about the settlement, about the hardships they endure, about their hopes that the wars will eventually end and allow them to build something better. She speaks to you as if you can understand complex narratives, as if your ability to comprehend extends beyond simple instructions. And perhaps in that moment, it does. Perhaps the combination of food and kindness and human connection unlocks something in your mind, allows you to grasp more than you normally could. Or perhaps she is simply skilled at pitching her words to a level you can process, breaking down complex ideas into simple components without condescension. You find yourself talking in return, telling her about your human family, about the people who raised you. The words come haltingly, your limited vocabulary struggling to convey the depth of feeling you associate with those memories. But the woman seems to understand. She nods and smiles and asks gentle questions that help you articulate things you have never quite been able to express. When you finally leave to return to your regiment, she presses a small object into your massive hand. A simple carved figure, human in form, with exaggerated features that make it almost comical. She tells you it is for luck, a reminder that even in the darkest times, there are people who remember kindness. You keep this figure with you from that day forward, stored carefully in the small personal effects pouch that is part of your gear. It becomes a talisman of sorts, a physical reminder of connection and meaning beyond the immediate demands of warfare. When things are at their worst, when the fighting is most intense, when you are most uncertain about your purpose and place, you touch the figure through the fabric of the pouch and remember the woman who gave it to you. The Ogryn, she remembered, the possibility of being good rather than merely useful. The regiment is eventually reassigned to a new war zone, this one far from the world where you encountered the kind civilian. The transit through the warp is difficult as always, your claustrophobia making the enclosed spaces of the transport ship almost unbearable. But you endure, as you have learned to endure all discomforts, focusing on your duties and your squad mates rather than on your own distress. Merrick stays close during the journey. His presence a comfort even when he cannot directly alleviate your anxiety. The new war zone is a hive world, one of those massive urban planets where billions of humans live in towering cities that stretch from the planet's surface to the limits of its atmosphere. The enemy is a rebellion, a significant portion of the planet's population that has turned against Imperial authority for reasons that are never adequately explained to you. All you understand is that some humans are loyal and some are traitors, and your job is to protect the former by eliminating the latter. Fighting in a hive city presents unique challenges. The environment is claustrophobic even by your low standards, with narrow corridors and low ceilings that force you to move in a perpetual crouch. The combat is close quarters, often occurring at ranges so short that firearms become less effective than simple brute strength. The civilians, caught between loyalist and rebel forces, add a layer of complexity that you struggle to navigate. How do you identify enemies when they look exactly like allies? How do you avoid harming innocents when the fighting takes place in their living spaces? These questions, difficult enough for human soldiers with sophisticated judgment capabilities, are nearly impossible for you. You make mistakes, as all soldiers do in such conditions. You fire at what you believe is an enemy position, only to discover too late that civilians were sheltering there. You demolish a wall to create a firing position, not realizing that your action has compromised the structural integrity of the entire building. You follow orders to clear a section of the hive, using the brutal tactics that work in open warfare, not understanding that such methods are catastrophically inappropriate in urban settings, where every room might contain non-combatants. These mistakes haunt you in ways that are new to your experience. Previously, when you made errors, they were simple failures of understanding or execution. You forgot an order, or you misunderstood what was required, or you lacked the strength to accomplish a task. Those failures were regrettable, but comprehensible. These new mistakes feel different. They involve harm to people you were meant to protect. Destruction of things that should have been preserved. You cannot fully articulate why this matters. Cannot explain the feeling in your chest when you see the aftermath of your actions. But the feeling is there nonetheless. A weight that no amount of physical strength can lift. The commissar recognizes your distress and takes you aside for what passes as counseling in the Imperial Guard. The conversation is difficult, as such conversations always are, when they involve trying to explain complex concepts to someone of your limited understanding. The commissar tells you that war is always terrible, that innocent people are always harmed, that perfect conduct is impossible in the chaos of combat. These truths are meant to be comforting, to alleviate your guilt. but they do not entirely succeed. You understand the words, but they do not change the fact that your actions resulted in deaths that should not have occurred. Merrick helps in his own way, spending time with you in the quiet moments between operations, talking through what happened, helping you process emotions that you lack the vocabulary to name. He does not try to absolve you of responsibility, but he does help you understand that mistakes do not negate your worth, that good people can do harmful things in difficult circumstances, that growth comes from learning rather than from achieving perfection. These lessons are subtle and complex, perhaps too complex for your intellectual capabilities. But something in Merrick's patient explanation reaches you anyway, helps you carry the burden without being crushed by it. The Hive World campaign lasts for several standard years, a grinding urban warfare operation that seems to have no end. Your squad becomes specialists in close quarters combat, developing tactics that leverage your strengths while minimizing the risk to civilians. Merrick's role as coordinator becomes even more crucial in this environment, as the complexity of urban operations requires constant communication and adjustment that you cannot manage alone. The bond between you deepens further, becoming something that others in the regiment recognize and accommodate, assigning you and Merrick as a paired unit that functions more effectively together than either could apart. During one particularly difficult operation, your squad is tasked with clearing a hab block that intelligence suggests is being used as a rebel stronghold. The building is a massive structure, thousands of residential units stacked on top of each other, home to tens of thousands of civilians who may or may not be sympathetic to the rebellion. The mission requires moving floor by floor, room by room, identifying combatants and neutralizing them while minimizing civilian casualties. The operation goes wrong almost immediately. The intelligence was inaccurate. The building contains far more rebels than expected, and they are better armed and more organized than anticipated. Your squad finds itself pinned down on one of the middle floors, taking heavy fire from multiple directions. The lieutenant leading the operation is killed in the first exchange of fire, decapitated by a well-placed sniper shot. Command devolves to the senior sergeant, a veteran named Horvath, who has fought beside you for years. Horvath makes the decision to withdraw, pulling the squad back toward the stairwell that represents their only escape route. But the rebels have anticipated this, and the stairwell is blocked by heavy weapons fire that makes approach suicidal. The squad is trapped, taking casualties, running low on ammunition. The situation deteriorates rapidly, sliding toward the kind of total catastrophe that wipes out entire units and becomes cautionary tales in training manuals. You assess the situation with your limited but practical intelligence. The stairwell is blocked. The squad is trapped. The solution is simple in concept, if not execution. Create a new path. You move to the exterior wall of the building, ignoring the weapons fire that impacts your armor and hide. With your bare hands, you begin to tear through the wall, ripping apart ferrocrete and metal reinforcement through sheer strength. The material resists, but not enough. Your massive hands find purchase in cracks and seams, pulling and pushing until the wall begins to fail structurally. Horvath realizes what you are doing and orders the squad to concentrate their fire on the rebels, buying you time to complete your work. Merrick positions himself near you, using his lasgun to pick off any enemies who try to stop you directly. The wall groans and shudders under your assault, and then suddenly gives way, a massive section collapsing outward and falling to the street far below. The opening you have created reveals the adjacent building, close enough that a human could potentially jump the gap, though the fall to the street would be fatal for anyone who missed. You do not make the jump. Instead, you brace yourself in the opening and extend your arms across the gap, creating a bridge with your own body. Your massive frame spans the distance between buildings, your hands gripping the edge of the adjacent structure, your feet braced against the floor of the room you just breached. You are now a human, or rather, abhuman, bridge, stable enough for others to cross if they move carefully. Horvath orders the squad to cross, one at a time, using your body as a bridge. They do so, moving hand over hand along your arms and back, trusting their weight to your strength. Some of them speak to you as they cross, thanking you or encouraging you. Others are silent, focused entirely on the crossing. Merrick goes last, his injured shoulder making the crossing difficult. You do not move, do not waver, holding perfectly still despite the strain on your muscles and the continued weapons fire from rebels who have realized what is happening. When Merrick reaches the other side and signals that all are across, you face a new problem. You cannot cross your own bridge. Your mass is too great, the angle wrong for you to pull yourself across without losing your grip. You are stranded on the rebel-held side, separated from your squad by a gap you cannot traverse. For a moment, you feel something approaching panic. The little ones are on the other side, and you cannot protect them from here. But Horvath has anticipated this problem. While you held the bridge, he had Merrick coordinate with other elements of the regiment. Reinforcements are moving to your position from the ground floor, fighting their way up through the rebels. You simply need to hold your position until they arrive. This is something you can do. You release your grip on the adjacent building and drop back into the room, taking up a defensive position at the opening you created. Your Ripper gun speaks its familiar thunder, clearing the immediate area of rebels. When the weapon runs dry, you use it as a club, then transition to simply using your fists when even the club becomes impractical. The reinforcements arrive to find you standing alone in a room full of rebel dead, your massive form covered in blood and wounds that would have killed a human several times over. You are still alive, still functional, still ready to continue fighting. The arriving troops secure the position and call for medici support, though you insist you are fine. It takes a direct order from the commissar, delivered via Vox communication, to make you submit to medical examination. The field medicae who treats you is amazed by your resilience. You have absorbed dozens of wounds, any one of which should have been incapacitating. Lust burns scar your skin. Bullets are embedded in your muscle. One of your fingers is broken, bent at an unnatural angle, but none of these injuries have stopped you from functioning. The medicae extracts what shrapnel can be safely removed, seals the worst burns, sets the broken finger. The rest, the medicae explains, will heal with time. Your Ogryn physiology is remarkable in its capacity for recovery. The building is eventually secured, though at tremendous cost. Your action in creating an escape route saved your squad, and word of it spreads through the regiment. You are commended officially, awarded a medal that you do not entirely understand. The commissar uses your example in speeches about duty and loyalty, holding you up as proof that abhumans can demonstrate the highest qualities of imperial service. You accept these accolades without truly processing their significance. What matters to you is simpler. The little ones are safe. Merrick is safe. You did what you were supposed to do. The Hive World campaign eventually ends, not with victory, but with stalemate. The rebels control significant portions of the Hive, the loyalists control others, and no side has the strength to completely eliminate the other. Your regiment is pulled out and reassigned elsewhere, leaving behind a world still burning, still fighting, still dying. You do not understand the strategic calculus that determines when to continue fighting and when to withdraw. You only understand that you are leaving, that the people you fought to protect will have to face the rebels without you. It feels wrong somehow, like abandoning a duty incomplete. But orders are orders, and you follow them, as you always have. As your career in the Imperial Guard stretches across years that blur into decades, you begin to notice changes in yourself that go beyond physical aging. Your understanding of the world, while still limited compared to humans, has expanded in subtle ways. You have learned patterns of behavior, developed intuitions about combat and social dynamics, accumulated a kind of practical wisdom that defies your intellectual limitations. You cannot explain these developments in abstract terms, cannot articulate the processes of learning and growth that have shaped you, but you can feel them nonetheless. A sense that you are more capable now than you were when you first entered service. The other Ogryns in the regiment notice too. They no longer treat you as an outsider, having come to accept that your differences do not diminish your fundamental Ogryn nature. Some even seek you out for guidance, recognizing that your unique perspective allows you to navigate situations that confuse them. You become a kind of unofficial intermediary, helping translate between human command and Ogryn understanding, ensuring that orders are comprehended and executed appropriately. This role brings its own satisfaction, a sense of contribution that goes beyond simple combat effectiveness. There are moments of unexpected beauty in your life, rare instances where the horror of warfare recedes enough to allow appreciation of simpler things. You witness a sunrise on a world whose name you will never remember, the sky painted in colors so vivid that even your simple aesthetics are moved. You taste food prepared by a regimental cook who takes pride in their work, flavors combining in ways that bring genuine pleasure. You hear music played by soldiers during a rest period, simple melodies that somehow capture feelings you cannot name but deeply recognize. These moments do not erase the horror or the difficulty, but they add texture to your existence, proof that even in the 41st millennium, even for an Ogryn caught between worlds, there can be moments of grace. Your relationship with Merrick continues to deepen over the years, becoming the most stable and meaningful connection in your life. He ages faster than you, humans being shorter lived than Ogryns under the best of circumstances, and military service being far from the best of circumstances. You notice the changes, the grey that appears in his hair, the lines that deepen around his eyes, the way he moves more stiffly after long marches. These changes trouble you in ways you cannot fully articulate. Merrick has been your constant companion, your helper, your friend. The thought of existing without him creates an anxiety that rivals your claustrophobia in its intensity. One day, during a quiet period between deployments, Merrick sits with you and talks about the future. His voice is gentle, the way it has always been when explaining difficult concepts. He tells you that his health is declining, that his ability to continue military service is limited. He will be medically discharged soon, sent to a veterans settlement where he can live out his remaining years in relative peace. He explains this carefully, making sure you understand that this is not abandonment, not rejection, but simply the natural consequence of age and accumulated injury. You do not want to understand. The idea of Merrick leaving is unacceptable, a violation of the bond between you. You suggest that you will leave too, will accompany him to this settlement and protect him there. But Merrick explains, with infinite patience, that this is not possible. You are still capable of service. The Imperial Guard will not release you while you can still fight. And even if they did, your presence in a civilian settlement would create problems. You are too large, too strong, too dangerous despite your gentle nature. The settlement could not accommodate you. The logic is sound, but you reject it anyway. You appeal to the commissar, asking for permission to be discharged alongside Merrick. The request is denied. You are too valuable to the regiment, your unique abilities too useful to waste. The decision is framed as a compliment to your service, but it feels like punishment. You will lose your closest friend, the person who has helped you navigate every difficulty of military life, and there is nothing you can do to prevent it. When the day comes for Merrick to leave, the entire squad gathers to see him off. There are speeches about his service, toasts drunk in his honor, promises made to remember him and his contributions. Merrick accepts these gestures with grace, thanking his comrades and wishing them well in future campaigns. But his attention keeps returning to you, standing at the back of the gathering, your massive form somehow seeming diminished by the weight of impending loss. After the official farewell, Merrick seeks you out one last time. He looks up at your face, so far above his own, and speaks words that you commit to memory with more determination than you have ever brought to any task. He tells you that you have been the best friend he could have hoped for, that knowing you has made his life richer, that he is proud of the Ogryn you have become. He tells you to keep protecting the little ones, to keep serving faithfully, to remember that your worth is not defined by others' perceptions, but by your own actions. He tells you that he will think of you often, that he will carry memories of your friendship into whatever future remains for him. You want to say something equally meaningful, but the words do not come. Your emotional vocabulary is too limited, your ability to express complex feelings too constrained. Instead, you do something simpler. You very carefully, with all the gentleness you can manage, embrace Merrick. Your massive arms encircle his much smaller frame, holding him close without crushing him, trying to communicate through physical contact what you cannot say with words. Merrick understands. He returns the embrace as much as he is able, and for a moment, the vast difference in your sizes does not matter. You are simply two friends saying goodbye. When Merrick finally boards the transport that will take him away, you stand watching until it disappears into the sky. The other members of your squad give you space, recognizing that you are experiencing something profound even if you cannot articulate it. For days afterward, you are unusually quiet, performing your duties mechanically, eating without your usual enthusiasm. The squad worries about you, uncertain how to help an Ogryn process grief. It is the commissar who eventually reaches you. He finds you alone, sitting in the corner of the barracks where your massive frame takes up space that could accommodate 3 human soldiers. The commissar sits nearby, not attempting physical proximity, but making his presence known. When he speaks, his voice lacks its usual harsh authority, instead carrying an uncharacteristic gentleness. He tells you that loss is part of service, that every soldier must eventually say goodbye to those they care about, that grief is the price we pay for connection. He tells you that Merrick would want you to continue serving faithfully, to honor your bond by being the best soldier you can be. These words penetrate your grief slowly, taking time to sink in and be processed by your simple understanding. But gradually, you begin to function more normally again. You return to your duties with renewed dedication, as if serving faithfully is itself a way of honoring Merrick's memory. The squad adjusts to his absence, but you never quite do. There is an empty space where Merrick used to be, a gap that no one else can fill. Other humans help you with administrative tasks, explain things you do not understand, provide the assistance you need, but it is not the same. It will never be the same. The battle lasts hours, though time becomes meaningless in the chaos of combat. When it finally ends, you are covered in filth and alien blood, your Ripper gun nearly too hot to hold, your body aching from exertions that would have killed a human. But you are alive, and more importantly, your squad mates are alive. You helped keep them that way. The squad sergeant, a grizzled human who has fought in dozens of campaigns, approaches you with something like respect in his eyes. He tells you that you did good, that you made the Emperor proud, that your strength saved lives today, and you feel a warmth in your chest that has nothing to do with the physical exertion, a sense of pride that transcends your simple understanding of the world. In the days and weeks that follow, you settle into the rhythm of military life. The structure suits you in ways that civilian life never did. The expectations are clear. The rules are simple. Fight when ordered to fight. Rest when permitted to rest. Protect the little ones at all costs. The food, while hardly gourmet, is plentiful enough to meet your massive caloric needs. The accommodations, while cramped by your standards, are better than you feared. And most importantly, you have purpose. You are not a burden or a problem to be managed. You are a soldier, a valuable member of the Imperial Guard, doing your part in the eternal war for humanity's survival. Your unique background, raised by humans rather than by other Ogryns, creates some interesting dynamics within your unit. The human soldiers find you slightly easier to communicate with than the other Ogryns, who speak in even more broken Low Gothic and struggle to follow anything but the most basic commands. You can hold simple conversations, understand jokes, even if you do not always find them funny, participate in the social life of the squad in ways that purebred Ogryns cannot. This makes you popular among the humans, who treat you less like an abhuman auxiliary and more like an unusually large and simple squadmate. The other Ogryns, however, view you with suspicion. You are too human in your mannerisms, too comfortable with the little ones. When they gather together during rest periods, engaging in the rough play and simple storytelling that characterizes Ogryn social interaction, you do not quite fit. You do not know the traditional tales they share, stories of great hunts and mighty warriors that have been passed down through Ogryn tribes for generations. You do not participate in their dominance displays, uncomfortable with the casual violence that they use to establish pecking order. They sense your difference and respond by excluding you. not maliciously, but simply because you are not one of them in the way that matters to their tribal psychology. This leaves you in a strange middle ground, accepted by neither group fully, but tolerated by both. You form your closest bonds with the human members of your squad, particularly those who show you kindness and patience. There is a young trooper named Ogryn who goes out of his way to include you in conversations, who explains things that you do not understand without making you feel stupid for not knowing. There is a veteran sergeant named Keller who treats you with a respect that makes you stand a little taller, who gives you orders in clear, simple language, and then trusts you to carry them out. And there is the commissar, stern and imposing even to someone of your size, who you view with a mixture of awe and devotion. The commissar represents the Emperor's will in your mind, a direct link to the divine authority that guides the Imperium. When the commissar speaks, you listen with absolute attention, prepared to carry out whatever orders are given, regardless of the danger involved. Over time, you prove yourself through action. In battle after battle, you demonstrate the value of your unique combination of Ogryn strength and human-influenced thinking. Where other Ogryns might charge ahead blindly, you have learned to wait for orders. Where they might attack the nearest enemy, you have learned to prioritize targets based on simple tactical considerations. Is this enemy threatening your little ones? Then they must be eliminated first. Is this enemy heavily armored? Then perhaps use your Ripper gun rather than trying to club them. Is this enemy at range? Then take cover and fire rather than running toward them across open ground. These slight advantages in tactical thinking make you more effective than you would be otherwise. The human commanders begin to specifically request you for certain missions. Operations where having an Ogryn who can follow slightly more complex orders makes the difference between success and failure. You guard important officers, your massive presence and unwavering loyalty, making you an ideal bodyguard. You lead other Ogryns. Your ability to translate human orders into terms your fellow abhumans can understand proving valuable. You serve as a bridge between two worlds, human enough to communicate with one side and Ogryn enough to be accepted by the other. But this unique position comes with costs. You are never fully relaxed, never completely yourself. With humans, you must be careful not to reveal the full extent of your limitations. They expect you to understand more than you do, to remember more than you can, to control your emotions and reactions in ways that do not come naturally. You learn to fake comprehension when someone explains something too complex, nodding along and hoping the important parts will become clear through context. You learn to hide confusion, maintaining a stoic expression, rather than revealing that you have no idea what someone just said. You learn to channel your emotions in acceptable directions, turning fear into aggression and sadness into determination. With other Ogryns, you must hide the parts of yourself that are too human. They do not understand your attachment to the little ones, the way you genuinely care about their well-being beyond simple duty. They do not understand your questions about the nature of your service, your occasional doubts about why you fight. They do not understand your need for approval and affirmation, seeing such things as weakness rather than natural emotional needs. Around them, you try to be more like they are, more simple and straightforward, but it never quite works. You are too contaminated by human influence, too shaped by your unusual upbringing, to ever fully return to pure Ogryn nature. The campaigns blur together over months and years. You fight on ice worlds where the cold, which would kill unprotected humans in minutes, merely makes you uncomfortable. You fight in the depths of hive cities, where the tight quarters trigger your claustrophobia, but your strength makes you invaluable for breaching fortified positions. You fight on plains and in forests and across shattered urban sprawl, facing enemies that range from rebellious humans to alien horrors that challenge your simple understanding of reality. Through it all, you survive when others do not. Your thick hide and dense bones turn aside blows that would kill humans. Your simple mind, lacking the imagination to truly comprehend death before it arrives, keeps you fighting when humans would freeze in terror. Your loyalty keeps you at your post when others might flee. You witness death constantly, Human squadmates who joked with you in the morning are gone by evening, their bodies left behind as the unit advances. Ogryns you knew, not friends exactly but familiar presences, fall in battle and do not rise again. The commissar executes a trooper for cowardice, the last pistol shot echoing in your mind long after the body is removed. You do not fully process these losses, lacking the cognitive framework to truly grapple with mortality and grief, but you feel them in a simpler way, a sense of wrongness, of absence where presence should be. The squad becomes smaller. The faces change. Only you remain constant, too tough to die and too simple to understand why that might be significant. In quiet moments, which are rare but do occur, you think about the family who raised you. Their faces are becoming hazy in your memory, details fading despite your efforts to hold on to them. You can remember that they were kind, that they cared for you, that leaving them hurt in a way you still do not fully understand. But you cannot remember their names with certainty anymore. You cannot remember the exact layout of the dwelling you shared with them. You cannot remember the sound of their voices speaking to you in gentler tones than any you hear now. This forgetting troubles you, makes you feel like you are losing something important. But memory is not an Ogryn's strength, and the present demands of survival leave little room for dwelling on the past. You try to write to them once, during a rare period of downtime between campaigns. A human trooper helps you, carefully explaining how to form the letters, what words to use. The message is simple. I am alive. I fight for Emperor. I remember you. But you do not know if they ever receive it. Do not know if they even remember you, the Ogryn child they raised who left years ago and never returned. The uncertainty sits uncomfortably in your mind. An itch you cannot scratch, a question you lack the ability to properly formulate. The other question that occasionally surfaces in your simple thoughts is about identity. What are you? Really, you were born Ogryn. There is no denying that. Your body, your strength, your limitations all mark you as clearly as any genetic test, but you were raised human, shaped by human hands and human values. You speak more like them than like your own kind. You think more like them, at least in some ways. You have adopted their perspective, seeing the galaxy through a lens that other Ogryns do not share. Does this make you less Ogryn, more human? Neither. Both. The philosophy of identity is far beyond your intellectual reach, but the feeling of being caught between categories affects you regardless of your ability to articulate it. In the Imperial Guard, there are rare individuals who seem to understand your unique situation. One such is a commissar named Vask, assigned to your regiment after your original commissar falls in battle. Vask has worked with abhumans extensively, has learned to recognize the signs of an Ogryn who is not quite standard. He notices the way you respond to orders, the slight hesitation as you process more complex language than most Ogryns could handle. He notices the way you interact with human troopers, more comfortable with them than with your own kind. And rather than seeing this as a problem, he sees opportunity. Vask begins training you specifically, pushing you to develop your strengths while working within your limitations. He teaches you to recognize certain enemy types by sight, associating visual markers with appropriate responses. He trains you in basic squad tactics, simple movements, and positions that you can execute without needing to understand the strategic reasoning behind them. Most importantly, he teaches you to use your unique position as a bridge to help other Ogryns understand what the human command staff needs from them. Under his tutelage, you become more effective than you ever imagined possible, not despite your hybrid upbringing, but because of it. The regiment's success rate improves with you in it. This is not arrogance, but observable fact, noted in the reports of officers who survive long enough to appreciate the difference you make. Other units request transfers to your regiment, specifically because it has that smart Ogryn, the one who can actually follow complex orders. You become something of a legend among the abhumans of the Astra Militarum, a story that Ogryns tell each other. There is an Ogryn who was raised by humans and learned their ways, who fights like thunder and thinks like, well, not like a human, not really, but like something more than a standard Ogryn. This reputation is simultaneously gratifying and burdensome. You take pride in being valued, in being seen as something more than a simple brute. But you also feel the weight of expectations, the pressure to always be the smart one, the reliable one, the one who can be trusted with responsibility beyond what other Ogryns receive. When you fail to understand something, when your limitations become apparent, you sense the disappointment, even if no one speaks it aloud. They forget, sometimes, that you are still an Ogryn, still limited in fundamental ways that no amount of human upbringing can change. The years accumulate, though you do not track them with any precision. You know you are older because your body tells you so. The minor injuries that you shrugged off in your youth now linger, aching in cold weather or during long marches. Your reactions, while still far faster than a human's, are fractionally slower than they once were. You notice that the younger Ogryns in the regiment seem impossibly energetic compared to your own measured pace. But age does not slow you much. Ogryns are durable creatures, and you are tougher than most. You have achieved what passes for success in the Imperial Guard. You have survived countless battles. You have been awarded commendations and medals that you do not fully understand, but wear proudly because they represent approval from those you serve. You have saved lives and taken lives in approximately equal measure. You have done your duty to the Emperor, fighting his enemies wherever they are found. By any objective standard, you are a successful soldier, an exemplary abhuman, a credit to both your human upbringing and your Ogryn heritage. But late at night, during the quiet hours when the rest of the regiment sleeps, and you keep watch because your massive size makes sleep difficult in cramped quarters, you sometimes wonder about the life you might have had. What would it have been like to grow up on an Ogryn world, among your own kind? Would you have been happier in that simpler existence, where expectations matched your capabilities and no one demanded more than you could give? Would you have been stronger, more confident, more comfortable in your own skin? Or would you have been less, lacking the perspective that human influence provided, trapped in a narrow worldview that never questioned or wondered or reached beyond immediate survival? And what of your human family, the people who raised you despite the difficulty, who gave you a foundation that has served you throughout your military career? Do they ever think of you? Do they wonder whether you survived, whether you remember them, whether their investment in a foundational Ogryn child yielded anything worthwhile? You hope they know, somehow, that you turned out well, that you became someone of value, someone who serves the Imperium faithfully, that their kindness was not wasted on a creature too simple to appreciate it. These thoughts are fleeting, difficult to hold in your mind for long. You are not built for sustained philosophical contemplation, but they return periodically, usually triggered by some small reminder of your childhood, a particular smell that recalls your family's dwelling, a piece of music that sounds like something they used to play, a moment of gentleness from a human squadmate that reminds you of the kindness you received in your early years. These moments crack open something in your chest, a feeling too complex for you to name, but present nonetheless. The broader Imperium, that vast galaxy-spanning civilization that you serve, has no category for someone like you. You are listed in official records as an Ogryn, classified as Homo sapiens gigantus, assigned to the Militarum Auxilia. Your unique upbringing merits no special notation, no recognition of the ways it has shaped you differently from your peers. To the Administratum, you are simply another abhuman auxiliary, one of millions serving in the Emperor's endless wars. The bureaucrats who process your service record would never think to mark you as unusual, would never recognize that your development represents something rare and perhaps valuable. This anonymity is both frustrating and comforting. Frustrating because some part of you wants recognition for what you have accomplished, wants acknowledgement that you have succeeded despite beginning from a place of disadvantage. Comforting because the Imperium's attention can be dangerous, particularly for abhumans who deviate from expected norms. Better to be overlooked, to serve faithfully without attracting scrutiny, than to become the subject of study, or worse, suspicion about genetic purity and proper Ogryn development. You have heard stories, passed among the Ogryns during rest periods, about abhumans who attracted too much attention from the wrong authorities. Ogryns, who were too smart and ended up being subjected to extensive testing by the Adeptus Mechanicus, treated as specimens rather than people. Ogryns who were too different and ended up being culled, eliminated as potential genetic corruption despite years of faithful service. These stories may be exaggerated or outright fabricated, the Ogryn equivalent of campfire tales, but they carry a warning that even your simple mind can grasp. Do not stand out too much. Do not draw attention. Do not give anyone reason to look too closely at how you differ from standard Ogryn patterns. So you continue as you have been, serving faithfully, using your unique abilities when they are needed, but not advertising them unnecessarily. You are content, in a way. Content is perhaps too strong a word, implying a level of satisfaction and self-reflection that remains beyond your reach. But you are not unhappy. You have purpose. You have comrades who accept you, even if they do not fully understand you. You have demonstrated value in a galaxy that has little patience for those who cannot contribute. For an Ogryn raised by humans, living in a world built for beings half your size and twice your intelligence, that represents a kind of success. The question of what happens after your military service, assuming you survive long enough to be discharged, is not one you think about often. Planning for the future requires a level of abstract thinking that challenges you. The idea of a life beyond the Imperial Guard, beyond the structure and purpose it provides, is difficult to conceptualize. Where would you go? Your human family, if they still live, probably could not take you back. You are too large now, too dangerous, too expensive to support, and you would not fit into their lives anymore, not after years of military service that have shaped you into something even more divergent from civilian norms. Could you return to an Ogryn world, try to find a place among your genetic kin? Perhaps, but you would still be an outsider, marked by your human mannerisms and different perspective. The Ogryn tribes might accept you, might find a role for someone of your strength, but you would never be fully one of them, never share the cultural background and experiences that bind them together. You would be a stranger among your own people, which is perhaps the loneliest thing you can imagine, even if you lack the vocabulary to express that loneliness clearly. Most likely, you will die in service. This is the fate of most Ogryns in the Imperial Guard. You will fall in battle, protecting the little ones one last time. Or you will suffer an injury that not even your tremendous resilience can overcome. Or you will simply wear out, your body pushed beyond even its considerable limits by years of warfare. When that happens, there will be no elaborate funeral, no monument to mark your passing. You will be recorded as a casualty, your gene seed harvested, if you are lucky, your body disposed of according to whatever local customs apply. The regiment will move on without you, as it has moved on without countless others. This fate does not frighten you as much as it probably should. Fear of death requires an ability to project into the future, to imagine your own non-existence that exceeds your cognitive capabilities. You understand death in concrete terms. People who were here are now gone. But the existential weight of mortality, the awareness that you will cease to be, remains abstract enough to be unreal. What does concern you is the thought of failing in your duty, of letting down the little ones through your own inadequacy. That fear is immediate and visceral, tied to your deepest instincts about loyalty and protection. So you continue forward, one day at a time, one battle at a time. You follow orders to the best of your ability. You protect those assigned to your care. You use your strength in service of the Imperium, just as countless Ogryns before you have done, and countless more will do after you are gone. Your unique background, raised by humans rather than by your own kind, has shaped you in ways both beneficial and difficult. But in the end, you are still an Ogryn, still bound by the fundamental nature that thousands of years of evolution on high-gravity worlds burned into your genetics. The experience of being an Ogryn raised by humans in the 41st millennium is not one of triumph or tragedy, but rather of constant adaptation. You adapt to a world built too small. You adapt to expectations that do not quite match your capabilities. You adapt to being caught between categories, neither fully human nor fully standard Ogryn. You adapt to military life that gives you purpose, but demands a simplicity that your upbringing has complicated. Every day requires adaptation, requires finding ways to function in systems not designed for someone like you. And in that adaptation, in that constant negotiation between what you are and what your circumstances demand, you find meaning. Not the complex, philosophical meaning that humans seek, but something simpler and perhaps more profound. You matter. Your strength protects lives. Your loyalty anchors your unit. Your unique combination of Ogryn power and human influence makes you valuable in ways that neither pure Ogryn nor pure human could be. You are useful, needed, part of something larger than yourself. This is not a grand narrative of heroism or salvation. You will not save the Imperium. You will not turn the tide of galactic conflict. Your name will not be remembered beyond your own regiment. And even there, the memories will fade after you are gone. But in the small moments, in the individual battles and daily interactions that make up your existence, you make a difference. You keep people alive who would otherwise die. You complete missions that would otherwise fail. You provide an example, however rarely recognized, of what is possible when rigid categories are bent just enough to accommodate difference. If you could articulate your own story, could reflect on your life with the kind of cognitive sophistication that remains forever beyond your reach, what would you say? Perhaps something like this: you were born different and raised different and remain different, but you have found a way to make that difference matter in positive ways. You have taken the challenges of your unusual upbringing and transformed them into strengths. You have refused to be limited by either the low expectations placed on Ogryns or the impossibly high expectations that come from your human influences. You have simply been yourself, as much as anyone in this galaxy can truly be themselves, and that has been enough. The Imperium of Man, in its vastness and its cruelty and its desperate struggle for survival, has room for many things. It has room for heroes and villains, for saints and sinners, for the brilliant and the broken. And somewhere in that vast expanse, it has room for an Ogryn raised by humans, a being caught between worlds, who serves faithfully, despite never quite belonging fully to either. Your story is one of millions, perhaps billions, of small stories that collectively comprise the Imperium's ongoing existence. It is not a story that will be told by historians or celebrated by poets, but it is real, it is meaningful, and it is yours. In the end, that is enough. To be useful, to be loyal, to protect the little ones, to serve the Emperor, whether or not you fully understand what that service means. To find moments of connection and purpose in a galaxy that offers precious little of either. To survive another day, another battle, another campaign. To be an Ogryn raised by humans in the 41st millennium is to walk a difficult path, but it is a path that can be walked with dignity and honor, even if the walker themselves cannot fully articulate why that matters. The Imperial Guard will call you to service again. The Commissar will give you orders. The little ones will need your protection. And you will respond, as you always have, with simple dedication and unwavering loyalty. Because that is what you are, beneath all the complexity of your unusual upbringing and the complications of your hybrid identity. You are an Ogryn, and Ogryns protect their people. That truth transcends biology and upbringing, genetics and environment. It is the core of who you are, and it will remain the core until the day your massive heart finally stops beating and your story ends, as all stories must. But until that day comes, you will continue. You will adapt and serve and fight and protect. You will be the bridge between human and Ogryn, the example of what happens when rigid boundaries are crossed. You will be yourself, in all your complicated, contradictory, simple yet nuanced existence. And in being yourself, you will contribute to the Imperium's survival in ways both large and small, recognized and unrecognized, understood and mysterious even to you. That is what it means to be an Ogryn raised by humans in Warhammer 40K. It means existing in the spaces between definitions, finding purpose in circumstances not designed for you, and somehow, against considerable odds, making it work. It means carrying the weight of two worlds on shoulders strong enough to bear it, even when neither world fully claims you as their own. It means being loyal when loyalty is costly, being strong when strength is not enough, and being yourself when yourself does not fit into any convenient category. In the grim darkness of the far future, where there is only war and humanity clings to survival by its fingernails, even this strange, complicated existence has value. Even an Ogryn raised by humans has a role to play. And play it you will, to the best of your considerable abilities, and within the limits of your significant constraints, because that is what duty demands and loyalty requires. This is your life, your story, your contribution to a galaxy that will never fully understand or appreciate what you represent. And somehow, in ways that you cannot articulate, but can feel in the simple certainty that characterizes Ogryn thought, that is enough. If you enjoyed learning about this unique perspective from the 41st millennium, please consider liking this video and subscribing to the channel. There are countless other stories waiting to be explored in the vast darkness of Warhammer 40K, each offering its own window into the brutal, complex, and endlessly fascinating universe that continues to capture imaginations across the globe. Thank you for joining me on this journey into the life of an Ogryn raised by humans. And remember, in the grim darkness of the far future, even the simplest among us have stories worth telling.